again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of TVU Sports. On today's program, we're going to travel south to the great community of High River, Alberta. It's about 30 minutes south of Calgary, and we're going to catch up with the co-chairman of the Guy Weedic Chuckwagon Championships, which is the fourth leg of the World Pro Chuckwagon Tour each and every spring. Welcome to the program this week, Blake Willard, who is the co-chairman, and this is actually the second time in the last 7 years that the Chuckwagon races in High River have been canceled.
Well, yeah, that's 2 times in 7 years. Like you say, 2013 was the big flood that High River had, which was, you know, the good Lord decided to make the weather that year. And this year, of course, is something different, but it's certainly forces beyond our control. They're very disappointed, both the organizers and the fans and the volunteers, all chomping at the bit to go again this year. And of course, as you see, no Chuckwagon races, no Guy Weedic rodeo, no wagon races. And of course, that's been all the way across the country here. In wagon racing and rodeo has all been canceled. So very disappointing to everyone.
Organizing and planning a 4-day competition takes a lot of time leading up to the public performances. As co-chairman, you certainly have to know any too well how much effort goes into getting the High River Rodeo and Chuckwagon grounds and the shows all put together. Blake, tell us a little bit about the planning that you guys have done even before those gates open each year.
Well, basically it starts even before the show, like a year in advance. Before the rodeo is taking place, we're already planning the next year. As far as track preparation is concerned, Buddy Bensmiller is the guy that gives us the direction for prepping the track and maintaining it and grooming it. He's the ultimate guy, go-to guy, as well as anything he says goes. If it's safe, if it's unsafe, he's the one. I mean, it's our families that are out there racing, so we want to make sure it's safe for everybody, including man and beast.
When changes started to evolve in early March due to the COVID-19 virus, and your committee's thinking was, would we still be able to run, I'm sure, because they were looking at Saskatoon, Medicine Hat, and of course the first show of the year, Grand Prairie, and even High River still didn't know at that time. What went through you guys' minds?
Well, it pretty much, everything hinged on what the Stampede was going to do, and the WPCA, of course, are tied to that so directly, and the CPCA. So when there was no Stampede, and that one being further down the road than, say, Ponoka or Medicine Hat and High River, they were canceling the Stampede already. There's a lot of organizing that has to be done in order to make this go. And the biggest thing there was, you know, if they had it all organized and ready to go, and then it got canceled, well, it'd be even harder to do that and harder to take. There'd be another huge monetary loss there as well.
Looking back to the days and even the months following that massive 2013 flood damage, certainly must have been a huge undertaking for your group to get the racetrack, the rodeo grounds, and all of the exhibition area and stands all ready and safe and suitable to host the fans back into the park by the spring of 2014, Blake.
Actually, the fairgrounds and that were all pretty much salvaged. It was still high ground there. They were lucky enough that it didn't damage too much. They were using it actually as a staging area for the Red Cross, and of course no rodeo was going on or anything was happening because of the rains, and it of course made a real mud bog of everything around the grounds, so nobody was going in or out of there as well. So it did take a little while. It washed away some of the track and a little bit of that, so they had to do some more maintaining and bring back a lot of sand and put it on top just to get it going again, so that was back in shape. And it's an ongoing thing. It's not Calgary's track, so it's a small town track, so it's not as perfect as Calgary.
Our special guest this week is the co-chairman of the Guy Weedic Chuckwagon Championships here in High River, Alberta, Blake Willard. We'll continue with our discussion with Blake right after this important message from KMC Sales.
The World Pro Chuckwagons are not racing this year, but that doesn't mean the WPCA's inventory of unique souvenirs and clothing won't be available. In fact, merchandising manager Ken Melvin has a full line of 2020 items for you to choose from.
We brought in a real cool sweatshirt Actually, it's screened with embroidery across, so that looks really good. We've got this, which we're keep on going from last year. What I've got on, we have two styles. It's a plaid shirt.
From ball caps to new ladies and men's jackets, WPCA merchandise is made to fit every size, every taste. Spoil yourself this year with your favorite items from KMC sales, including the classiest belt buckle you'll ever wear and a Kurt Bensmiller men's or ladies watch. And don't forget your 2020 Spectator Guide, just $10 this year. Or with orders over $60, you'll receive your very own copy free. Place your orders today online at kmcsales.net.
Welcome back to High River, Alberta, in the amazing community about 30 minutes south of the city of Calgary. And our special guest for today's program is the Guy Weedic Showdown's co-chairman, Blake Willard. Blake, we tend to talk a lot about the third week in June when it's Guy Weedic Showtime in High River, but actually for Western sports outdoor activities, you guys get started with a little britches rodeo back on the long weekend in May.
Yeah, that's basically right around the long weekend, and it's always been one of the premier events in Alberta. And as far as some of the who's who of rodeo that have ever won anything in Canada or even in NFR, they started there riding steers or the wild pony events and bareback riding as kids under 16 years of age, and that's where that Little Britches Rodeo come from. And there's just a ton of support for that. That's the first big rodeo, and the community is behind that one. The parade and everything that goes along with it, it's a staple. This year they did a virtual parade. They said, okay, if you've got pictures or video or anything from past Little Britches parades, please send them in. Well, they did about an hour and a half video that you could sit there and watch old parades, basically, and in some cases, people sitting along the parade route, and it was really quite unique and innovative to actually still have a parade, and nobody's there. It's a virtual parade. So it was a wonderful thing that they did this year, just to make sure everybody didn't forget about what was going on there.
We tend generally to focus on the actual sporting activities, but in reality, not many of these could even exist without the corporate community stepping up to play a very important role each and every year. In light of this COVID world pandemic, the business world has certainly been very hard hit, and that has to concern your Chuckwagon committee as you move forward, Blake.
Well, especially with the corporate sponsorship, of course. We're all aware of what's going on in the world with the financial situation. A lot of these companies have just been devastated and torn in half. So in order for them to actually start stepping up to the plate again and putting money into canvas sponsorship, tarp sponsors, sign sponsors, heat sponsors, it's going to be difficult for them. There are a few companies that are still going fairly strongly, and some of their businesses have increased. So hopefully they'll remember why they increased, and they'll want to actually step up to the plate and do that. And in High River, it's been a great spot for sponsorship. The old days are gone, where back in the 40s and the 50s, where the wagons would roll in and they'd have a 1-ton truck with some horses on it and a wagon strapped to the back, and they'd roll up and go door to door and ask if they could get a couple $100 just to paint somebody's name on a canvas. So they would have blank canvases and they would paint the sponsor's name on there, and that's what the sponsorship was in the old canvas sales.
Like, you're standing beside a very special commemorative Chuckwagon and tarp with the word Fire Wagon emblazoned on the side of it. Tell us a little bit about the story behind that.
Well, all my life has been Chuckwagons, and before I was born. So basically, I have driven Chuckwagons but never raced them, and horses pretty much all my life. And so we decided, okay, in 1997, the World Police Fire Games was coming, and so we said, okay, you know, Chuckwagons have been racing around for, at that time, probably 80 years. And I said, but the fire wagons, the old horse-drawn fire wagons, were going around for centuries. So why don't we put together a Chuckwagon and sponsor it for 1997? Well, we did that in 97, and we carried on for 15 years after that. And it was pretty much the first time that an actual wagon family was a sponsor. And we had up to 40 or 50 corporate sponsors involved just with our fire wagon. And one year we had 6 out of the 36 Chuckwagon sponsors that were either part of our wagon at one time and stepped up and bought a tarp on their own, or were still actually part of our wagon because they wanted to remain part of it so they could come for the hospitality, the food, the live music, and enjoy the camaraderie around the fire wagon. We used to have a lot of fun.
Some closing thoughts about the High River Rodeo and Chuckwagon Committee and what makes this venue one of those really special tour stops on the circuit each year for not only the contestants but the many fans that come out each and every spring to see what's really happening.
Well, probably High River is one of the premier events of the year. It's not the biggest, but it is one of the closest up close places you can go. Go back, visit the drivers, go visit the horses. You know, it's not a high security area for all that kind of stuff, and you can come back and get a real close-up view. And when they say feel the thunder, you can be up on the rail and feel that thunder. It's just a beautiful setting and a wonderful place to go. High River is a real heritage town. The whole feel is all small town America. It's just a wonderful place to be in the West, for sure.
We're in High River, Alberta, Canada, about 30 minutes south of the big city of Calgary, nestled in the shadow of a major metropolitan area. But one of the great spots in Alberta to get out and enjoy the great Western way of life, especially with Chuckwagon racing and a rodeo. And it's been our pleasure to have the co-chairman of the Guy Weedic Championships, Blake Willard, as our special guest. I'm Arnie Jackson for TVU Sports. So long for now.